In favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? 12-0-0. Non-routine applications are our next item, and I would call on the Chair of the Budget Committee, Mr. Pellegrino, for ED8.
Mr. Chairman, I wish to move ED8, which is from the Board of Education. This is a request to release the conditions on MISA. It's for $24,084,000.
Second.
Item has been moved and seconded by Mr. Finger. Committee report. I'm sorry. Committee report first.
Mr. Chairman, the Budget Committee met. Ben Branyan from the administration and Joe Ross, Chairman of the Building Committee, presented to us. The specific language of the condition for which we voted upon was the following. Subject to release by the Board of Estimate and Taxation upon receipt and acceptance from the MISA Building Committee of all bids for the MISA project. That was the first condition. The second condition was subject to release upon receipt and acceptance of a report from the campaign for MISA. On the second condition, a written report was included in the information we reviewed. Of that information, I think there were two pertinent paragraphs which I'll share with the public right now. First is fundraising results to date. Gift pledges to the campaign for MISA total $1,195,801. Now, these are pledges, and they are payable over 3 installments over 3 years. Once the town releases the balance of all approved funding, the campaign will begin to call the pledges. The second item, I believe of note here, is that the next phase of the campaign for MISA, and that is that once ground has been broken for the new auditorium, the campaign anticipates the launching of a public phase of the campaign, which would principally focus on the sale of auditorium seats, with prices to be determined by the Board of Education. So the Budget Committee felt that that more than satisfied that release of the condition. As for the first condition, the Board of Ed had brought before us the specific dollar amount, and there was discussion amongst the Budget Committee members as to whether or not the FF&E, I believe that's furniture, fixtures, and equipment, had been bid. It had not yet been bid. And also there was a discussion on contingency, releasing a certain amount of contingency. And after a very healthy discussion, there was a compromise reached where we held back $1,344,000 from the total dollar amount, which is for the FF&E. And we went ahead and released the dollar amount associated with the contingency. So that brought our total, as I discussed earlier, to $24,084,000. We voted unanimously on that amendment, and we voted unanimously to approve the release of conditions. If this is now passed by the full board tonight, I believe Mr. Ross, the Building Committee, Chairman of the Building Committee, and the Building Committee are in position to accept the bids and move forward with the project immediately. And that's my report on this release of conditions. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 12-0-0.
Very good.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the BET board. I'd like to present my report for the May 2013. And if I may, just make a few points here. As of this month, we have 84 court cases pending. We settled 5 residentials and 2 withdrawn. Unfortunately, however, though, we did get 16 new appeals filed against the 2012 grand list. Last year at this time, we had an additional 22, so we are still doing fairly well. There is music. Yeah. It's not mine. Well, to date, we are in the midst of implementing our elderly and other benefits to local firefighters. For instance, we had 48 firefighters apply this year. 27 of them will be receiving the $1,000 credit on their real estate. The 21 remaining will receive credit on their motor vehicles. We don't know exactly what that will be yet because we're waiting for your mill rate tonight. As far as the elderly are concerned, we had 190 automatically renewing from last year. We had 162 that will be qualifying for the state program. As far as the local program for seniors, which is just the town of Greenwich's program, we have 377 receiving credit from last year. We'll have 60 new applicants this year. And basically that doesn't include, we have 41 eligible applicants that get a benefit that own a co-op. They're not necessarily applied in the same fashion because the co-op tax bill is paid out as one, so we actually cut them a check later on in the year. Okay. Anybody have any questions?
Lauren, how does that, offhand, do you know how that compares with the numbers we had last year?
It's very similar. I don't have a specific total yet. I will have a total for you. My thinking is that at the end of this week we'll be done processing all the elderly applications. We'll have a mill rate. Next week we will actually finalize the grand list file and send it off to the collector's office so that he can process and create his tax bills for the month of June. So we'll have exact numbers for you in our June report. But it's about the same as what we have been before.
I move that we accept the assessor's report.
Moved by Ms. Tarkin, second by Mr. Finger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Those-
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, BET members. Start out by talking about Hurricane Sandy, the first topic on the controller's report. The Hurricane Sandy updates are covered basically every month at the audit committee. Ron Lally gives an update, and a detailed update. And one of the progress reports that has been made recently is we got a check for $800,000. We did get an advance payment in December for $225,000. We did get reimbursed for the truck that was damaged during the old Greenwich fire, and we got the $800,000. So we've got over $1 million to date. One of the purposes of advance payments is, unlike other towns, they're cash flow strapped. When you get to the Treasurer's report further, you'll see where we have $96 million in the general fund at this point in the year. The purpose of the advance payment is to give the towns and the cities that are hurting for money the funds so they can make it through the year without having to go and borrow. Some towns actually have to go and get short-term carryover notes. Usually they're TANs, tax anticipation notes. So we benefit, along with everybody else, of getting advance payments. The total submission to date is just slightly under $8 million, and I wanted to explain the process because 8 of the members do not usually attend the audit committee meetings for the purposes of getting the updates. If you see in the second sentence where it has Mr. Lally and Pat Marinan, internal auditor, they've met at least 10 times with the adjusters. It's a slow process. The insurance companies, because of the magnitude of the damages done not only here but in New York and New Jersey and up the coast, are going to have to pay out many, many millions and billions of dollars. So they're contesting everything, and that makes the process slow as far as getting the total return. A lot of the submissions are eligible not only for insurance recoveries but also for FEMA recoveries. There's an order here. If something is eligible for both a FEMA reimbursement and insurance reimbursement, FEMA will not pay until the insurance part of it is resolved. So the insurance piece has to be resolved. FEMA will also, and they are going to bat for us, if something is rejected, they will actually contest it with the insurance companies and the towns so that they can get everything off of their plates on the insurance side before they'll submit their reimbursements. The FEMA coordination is done through the Selectman's office. So the Finance Department with the Risk Manager, Internal Auditor, is working with Dustin in the First Selectman's office to coordinate this. The reason I bring this up is I know Mr. Raymer asked the question last week, and I tried to explain it before. The process is very slow, and I'll give you an example. In March of 2010, we had reimbursements for damage to the golf course, for trees in various towns because of that windstorm that had a lot of tree damage. In June of 2011, we settled most of the claim. But it took us another year until we resolved the whole claim. So this process, if that process took almost 2 years, this could potentially take the same amount of time. What we try to do is to quantify at the end of the year, June 30th, working with the auditors, to book a receivable. However, it's very difficult because we don't anticipate getting much more in the next 3 to 6 months, and the receivables are booked only if they're receivable within 60 days after the year. So I basically wanted to explain the process and wanted to know if there's any questions from any of the 8 members that don't normally attend, or even the 4 members that attend the audit committee. Mr. Johnson?
So Pete, just to summarize, we're anticipating getting about $8 million back from the insurance company and/or FEMA?
No, the claim is $8 million,
Okay.
total claim. The appropriation is less than $6 million. There was the $3,801,000 piece that Joe Siciliano came before. You had Public Works come before. You had the general fund side where the police came for overtime, fire. We hopefully, I can't tell you we're going to get the whole $8 million, but the piece that the insurance company doesn't cover will be supplemented with the FEMA. And hopefully we get a good portion of it. I don't want to. I doubt if we get the whole $8 million.
And what you just referenced in the beginning of your statement was we've gotten 800 or $1 million out of. Is that out of the $8 million we're hoping to get?
It hasn't been identified.
Okay.
It's an advance payment, as I started to say, because the towns are strapped for cash. They need something to pay the bills. The smaller towns that have cash flow problems. We've had 8 advance payments. Other than the reimbursement for the fire truck, it hasn't been identified.
Okay.
It's for the whole claim.
Mr. Norton?
Pete, explain what the composition of the claim is. It includes, amongst other things, regular salaries for those people who were both paid during the days they weren't working, but at the same time the town hall being closed so that they weren't able to come to work. So the $8 million includes multiple things, including physical damage to property as well as reimbursement for operating expenses that the town has incurred.
It includes everything, probably in reverse order. The first piece is the $3,801,000 that came before the BET and the RTM. Joe Siciliano, and I think it had 5 components. It had the Todd's Point, it had the 2 islands, it had the marinas, and Island Beach. There was a 5th one. There was a marina in somewhere, Byram. And then the smaller piece, which is about $2 million that came before the BET and the RTM, had the larger components of like police fire overtime, fire overtime, and in the public works areas, certain reimbursements for debris cleanup. There also was a large piece in there. There was 2 $500,000 claims for tree damage. We're limited, we're capped at $1 million, $500,000 for the town side and $500,000 for the golf course. That hasn't been identified, and that claim has been ratcheted down to about $700,000 or $800,000. The piece that Art was referring to is the little piece. There's little pieces such as business interruption. If the golf course is shut down, potentially you could seek reimbursement. There's Town Hall was closed for 2 days. There's reimbursement for loss of people not coming to work in Town Hall. I think, did I cover most of your question? Yeah. So there's basically everything that we could apply to the claim, we submit it. You actually can submit cost incurred before the storm comes. I don't remember which day it was, but let's say going back to like Thursday of the week before, preparation for the storm, you could actually submit claims for that. When was the storm? Sunday? Was it Sunday into Monday or something? Yeah, it was Monday. So you could actually submit for reimbursement for preparation costs in anticipation of a storm. This storm.
Pete?
Mr. Raymer? Oh, sorry.
Ms. Tarkington.
Oh, I just wanted to, talking about FEMA, it was my understanding, at least when I was in a meeting with Parks and Rec and Mr. Finger about a month ago, that we had not received any reimbursements from FEMA from the October 2011 storm. Is there any update on that? I mean, it does go to show the kind of lag that can occur in some of these reimbursements.
Actually, Mr. Pellegrino asked for that information. We were working on a full accounting of all the FEMA reimbursements going back to March of 10. Unfortunately, the person that was working on this had 2 cataract operations, and that turned to Dustin to help me out. Now Dustin's helping out. So we'll have an update on all the FEMA reimbursements for all the storms going back to March of 10 for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Of the roughly $8 million, what portion of that is insurance and what portion of that seems to be pure FEMA stuff?
We don't know.
You don't know that?
That's the whole point of the delay is they're contesting everything. I would say the $8 million is been submitted for insurance. The pieces that don't get allowed will go.
Overtime, for example.
Some of it's eligible for, a lot of it's not eligible for the insurance, but covered by FEMA. So
Do the insurance companies pay an interest component on the delayed payment on your claims?
I'm not aware of that. No. I've never seen that in either insurance or FEMA
Thank you.
for these claims.
Mr. Goldrick?
Yes, Mr. Mayersky, just to confirm, Ron Lally is still confident that we are going to be reimbursed for the vast bulk of that $8 million at this point that we are claiming, correct?
He was really hedging. Somebody just asked me that question about the $8 million, and it was either Mr. Raymer or Mr. Johnson. The piece that I don't want to commit to saying we're going to get $7,900,000 and we only end up with $4 million. But that's the statements he's been making. That's his goal, is to get as much as the $8 million as possible. We're going to be well off relative to other towns in cities, in counties, subject to the work that's been put in by the risk manager and the internal auditor. And when the final numbers come in, you're going to be more than pleased relative to what the other towns are getting.
I'm sorry. And I think the point you're making there is because we're putting in an outstanding effort in terms of documentation,
Yes.
crossing the T's, dotting the I's,
Yes.
and being very thorough and thoughtful.
As a matter of fact, as soon as this storm, the wind stopped, the risk manager and the internal auditor went out and started taking pictures. And they actually got GPS coordinates for trees, certain trees, where they're located, et cetera, et cetera. If you've looked at my controller's report in the risk management section for the last 8-9 months, you can see where a number of internal audits have been bumped. The fire marshal's audit, the audit in the harbor master's area, because they've spent so much time documenting it And you could see here where they've met 10 times at least
Right.
to date with the adjusters. They've got reams of documentation.
Right, well, it would seem to me that this would be a very good use of their time and a very high return on our investment in the internal auditor and risk manager.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to accept the controller's report.
I have a motion to accept the controller's report, seconded by Mr. Raymer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 12-0. That leads us into the treasurer's report.
I'll move to accept that, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion to accept the treasurer's, seconded by Mr. Finger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 12-0-0. Let me just write that down. Going back one step, Peter, for all parties involved in the budget process, I probably might forget this in the chairman's report, but magnificent. The amount of time in the budget process, your department, everybody helping was just amazing. I can't believe the hours that went into the buildup of the budget from starting with the presentations right on through everything. So I want to just thank you in case I forget to do that in my chairman's report. It was amazing.
As long as you're going to thank me, I'm going to thank the person most responsible to my left here. I noticed you didn't mention him, but as you all know, he's invaluable, and he's the best at what he does.
I think some of the budget
on behalf
committee
of-
members are going to be calling you guys for a little get-together soon. I can count on that, so,
So
well,
you- thank
but
you.
no, it's, of course, Roland and everybody else, it was really amazing. Okay, I just did that now while you're here because I'm likely to forget it in the chairman's report. BET standing committee reports. We have reports submitted. Mr. Norton, you had something you wanted to add to audit?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make everybody aware of the agenda we're going to have at the June 13th Audit Committee meeting.
Okay,
That's all.
big items, right? Big agenda?
There'll be a big item, yes, there will.
All right. Investment, budget law, HR, policy procedures, I have nothing. Liaisons. Revaluation team report, I think, is included in our package. That's it. Moving over to item 9, special project team reports. Nathaniel Witherell Building Committee, we have a report on that.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, there is a subcommittee of the building committee, construction committee that's meeting tomorrow. I will not be able to attend that because I'll be someplace between New York, LaGuardia, and Charleston, South Carolina, when that meeting is being held.
Okay. Do we need to have coverage at that?
I don't think we do, but
Okay.
it's an 8 o'clock meeting. I'm sorry, it's a 10 o'clock meeting at,
And then Greenwich High School MESA remediation report?
I think the important thing here is just that everyone read the reports that have been issued jointly by the town and the BOE. They're brief, and I think everyone was circulated copies of these earlier in the month, but they're very important to read just to stay on top of the project. When other residents ask questions, we should have consistent answers.
Okay, thank you. Hey, I have, I can add to labor contracts. Ms. Kieran and I are on, what is the contract right now? It's the GMEA contract. We've had one little organizational meeting, another meeting to follow. Educational. It's led by the RTM Labor Contracts Committee is involved in that heavily, and I believe there's 2 members from the Board of Ed running that, Peter Shear and Jennifer Dayton. So we're meeting with that. That'll be ongoing. New business. Item number 10, approval to hire. Peter Minarski, does this item come from you?
Yes, yes. Before I get to it, I took the time to type up the resolution, but I want to go into a little bit of the history. OPEB became a trust fund January 1st, 2008. And in 2008, we did an RFP. And prior to that, EFI, the retirement board actuary, did both the OPEB report and the retirement board report. And before OPEB became a trust fund, it was a special revenue fund, and there was an ad hoc committee made up of 3 members of the BET. And the members were Larry Simon, Art Norton, and Bob Stone, who everybody knows, the 3 of them. And what happened is when we went to a trust fund, we phased out the 3 BET members, and they became civilians, one by one. But during the year of 2008, we did RFPs for actuaries, and there was a resolution back then, and the evaluation team consisted of Bob Stone, Art Norton, Larry Simon, and myself. We scored, and we picked Hooker and Holcomb back then. And there was a resolution at the July 21st, 2008 meeting where they designated to the ad hoc committee the responsibility to hire the actuary. The ad hoc committee's gone. So in my controller's report on a number of years, I've reported that, and this is in the second whereas in the current resolution. An evaluation team was created consisting of a retirement board member, Larry Simon. We got Michael Wasik, who was invaluable during this process, has a background in this area from the RTM, and myself, controller and also a retirement board member. And we received 10 responses. We interviewed 6, and based on that, we made tonight we're making a recommendation, and if you accept it, it'll be the last under the whereas the resolves to hire the firm of Boomersham Consultant Group out of Maryland. Want to report there's a cost savings by hiring this actuary for both retirement board, which is selected per charter by the retirement board to do the retirement actuary, and this one of about $3,000 if we combine the 2 reports, because the census data, instead of sending it to 2 different actuaries, goes to 1. So our recommendation on behalf of Mr. Simon and Mr. Wasik and myself is to hire Boomershine Consultant Group. A couple of add-ons. Number 1, EFI is no longer in existence. EFI was taken over by a firm called Chiron. I believe it's spelled Cheiron. And for full disclosure, the former actuary, Greg Stump, actually was hired by Boomershine, and it was one of the reasons it played in the role to hire Boomershine. It would be a 5-year contract, a 3-year contract with 2 option years. And again, there would be cost savings if you affirm the recommendation of the evaluation team.
So, if I could ask, so we're going to take the whereas and the resolved and approve those.
The last whereas.
Just the last resolve.
Okay, so everybody has this handout, but I don't believe you had it before tonight, so I would like to read it. Resolved that the BET affirms a recommendation of the evaluation team to hire Boomershine Consulting Group to a 5-year contract to perform actuarial services for the OPEB fund effective July 1, 2013.
Actually, this was given. It was given in the package.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I just for hard copy, in case you were going to read what you just did.
Okay, so I'm going to consider that item moved by the controller, brought to us by the controller.
Shall I?
Pete, I remember you or Larry talking about getting better forecasts out of whoever we hired as actuary, meaning longer-term forecasts. I think EFI had only gone out 2 or 3 years for the retirement board. Is Boomershine going to provide longer-term forecasts for us?
EFI traditionally was giving us 5 years. You
5
talking about
years.
the annual required contribution?
Yeah.
They were doing 5 years under different scenarios, different assumptions.
Do they go any further than that?
We could ask them.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, Mr. Finger?
Peter, did Hooker Holcomb who was handling this for the OPEB trust previously, did they submit a proposal as well?
They were a finalist.
They were finalists.
They were one of the finalists, Hooker and Holcomb.
I know that when was it 5 years ago that we selected, made Hooker Holcomb, and we selected, or the retirement board selected EFI?
Yes.
At that time, we did not, this board chose not to go with the same company, EFI, that had been providing the actuarial report for OPEB, but was being retained by the retirement board.
Yes.
So is the thinking now to go with the same firm only motivated by the cost savings, or was there not a substantive?
No, the cost savings was in all of the proposals. If there was, not all 6 of them were considered for both sides, but all of them offered a cost savings if they got both pieces of the actuary report. So that was not the motivation. And it was not the sole motivation, because 2 of the finalists, Boomershine and Cherion, consisted of former EFI people. I don't know if anybody, Mike's been around. If you remember, before Greg Stump, he had Graham Schmidt.
Mm-hmm.
Graham Schmidt was still, it was with the Cherion firm, still is with EFI, and he was one of the people submitting the proposals. So we had both of the actuaries were in play as far as the finalists. Hay Group submitted a proposal, was a finalist. Hooker and Holcomb was a finalist. A firm called Nyhart, N-Y-H-A-R-T. I embarrassed to admit, I've never heard of that firm, but they were a finalist. And Siegel. But that cost was considered for all the firms. Wasn't a deciding factor.
So go ahead.
I just want to make sure this is clear. Peter, I think you said this, but I want to go back to this. You had 3 people review the proposals, and that was a member of the RTM, yourself, and a member of the trust board.
Yes.
And you were unanimous in your choice?
No. We were unanimous at the end. We met in my office 2 or 3 times, and we were actually very close on all of them, but we were not unanimous until the very end.
So with that said, I still need to decide a moved. So I'll accept the motion that the resolve be moved. as
So
written,
move.
And I'll accept the second.
Second.
Okay, so now the item's moved in second, I think we can have discussion on it that we've already kind of completed. Further discussion? Okay. Okay, let's see what it goes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 12-0-0. It's those little surprises that are so nice. Okay, that takes care of that item. Let me just check that off.
While you're doing that, this is a meeting of the BET. If you're looking for planning and zoning, that may be somewhere else. We're more than happy to help our fellow citizens.
Okay, the next item on the, under new business, I'm going to call on, I believe, Mr. Norton for this one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, excuse me, last year we retained we signed a 5-year contract with McGladrey to perform the annual audit for the town of Greenwich. This is actually, and the contract was 2 years with 3 option years to succeed that. This is actually the 2nd year of the first part of the contract. And I just wanted to present it to the full BET before I sign the agreement, which I will do on Friday, that we will retain McGladrey LLP to perform the audit for the fiscal year 2013.
Okay. Does that come on behalf of the audit committee?
Yes.
Okay. So then it's moved on behalf of a committee. Discussion. Mr. Raymer.
Is this one, again, a 2-year contract with 3 re-ups at the end, or how does?
Yes. Yes, and this is the 2nd year of the first part of that contract.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 12-0-0. Next item, mill rates for fiscal 2013-14. At this time, I would hand over the microphone to our clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to read off the resolutions for the general fund tax. Resolve that a tax at the rate of 10.675 mils on the dollar be and the same is hereby levied and laid upon the assessment list of the town of Greenwich last completed as the tax for said town's general fund for the succeeding fiscal year, to wit, for the fiscal year July 1, 2013 through June 30, 2014. Resolved that the chairman and clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall forthwith file a certificate of the levying and laying of such tax with the town clerk, who shall record such certificate in the town meeting record book and obtain a receipt from the town clerk that this has been done.
Okay, the item has been moved,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Pellegrino. Discussion?
Just a,
Mr. Finger?
like a housekeeping point, before the chairman and the clerk sign the resolution, and this would go for the others that we're talking about, Peter, Roland, if you could fix the printing. Okay.
Yeah, there's a extra space in there.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 1200.
Next is a resolution for the sewer maintenance fund tax. Resolved that a tax at the rate of .579 mils on the dollar being the same is hereby levied and laid upon the assessment list of the town of Greenwich last completed as the tax for said town's sewer maintenance fund for the succeeding fiscal year, to wit, for the fiscal year July 1, 2013 through June 30, 2014. Resolved that the chairman and clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall forthwith file a certificate of the levying and laying of such tax with the town clerk, who shall record such certificate in the town meeting record book and obtain a receipt from the town clerk that this has been done.
Item has been moved,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Raymer. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 1200.
And the resolutions for the sewer improvement fund tax. Resolved that a tax at the rate of .057 mils on the dollar being the same is hereby levied and laid upon the assessment list of the town of Greenwich last completed as the tax for said town's sewer improvement fund for the succeeding fiscal year, to wit, for the fiscal year July 1, 2013 through June 30, 2014. Resolved that the chairman and clerk of the Board of Estimate and Taxation shall forthwith file a certificate of the levying and laying of such tax with the town clerk, who shall record such certificate in the town meeting record book and obtain a receipt from the town clerk that this has been done.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 1200. Boy, it's tough, Mary Lee. We have to sign those. Okay, real quick, while we're still on the mill rate, we have the originals to sign tonight, and we're done? Okay, just checking. Mr. Pellegrino?
A question for, I think, Mr. Minarski or Roland. I just want to be clear, so the public is clear. For the general fund, the increase in the mill rate is going up 2.75%, but if you're in the sewer district, you're going up 2.82%. Is that correct expression? That sounds correct. Thank you.
I'd like to make a couple comments. Microphones. It'll only be a couple months or 3 months or so, we'll be starting to think about guidelines again. I would be the first one to say I'd be very surprised if we can maintain low increases like that going forward. We're going to have to do a lot of work, and I think Mr. Finger said, we have a lot of work to us. ahead of us in each budget, and, I agree with them on that. I think it's going to be a lot of work to continue that diligence to be able to do that. But I congratulate everyone for all their hard work on that. Old business. I have nothing under old business. Approval of BET minutes, April 15th, 2013. That's our regular monthly meeting.
I'll second the motion that we approve the April 15th minutes.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Our April 24th special meeting, BET special meeting. Moved by
Second.
Ms. Kieran, seconded by Ms. Tarkington. Discussion?
Yes.
Mr. Raymer?
I just think it deserves to be said that there were, at this meeting, there were a lot of very detailed comments from the membership, and I just wanted to mention that I thought that the ability of the clerk to capture that detail and reflect it in minutes was unusual.
Maybe special would be another word to use.
I would say that I will tell you about the first contact I had with the clerk on the minutes. It's very rare that we put detail like that in, other than our budget meeting, other than we do the budget in past practice. I could only imagine what comments were sent in. I saw some of them, and I just said, do the best you can, and it was just outstanding work. I think some of the residents in the future will be able to look at that and say, oh, boy, that was an interesting one. And it was really hit me more when Peter Tessie was in front of the RTM, and he brought out some of the minutes and the history on the high school, when they were building the high school, and I thought it was sort of, it resembled that. So with that said, April 24th special meeting minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? 14-0-0. Peter and Roland voted to 12-0-0. I'm just teasing you. Okay, Mr. Norton, do you have anything?
No, Mr. Chairman, no, thank you.
Ms. Kiernan, do you have anything? Tonight, I actually do have a chairman's report covering a few items, and I think the last month has been one to remember. Full-time service on this board would be an understatement. Last month was above and beyond. Besides our special set of meetings, our committee assignments, our district meetings, debt policy meetings, in addition to all of that, I can only speak for the things that I know about, but I know people reached out. Mr. Raymer and I also attended the Retired Men's Association and gave a presentation on the budget. We're not retired yet. But we're not retired yet. Although I think, Mr. Raymer, your wife might be pushing you more than my wife's pushing me. I think I still have the list that I have to fill on a refrigerator. But it was a pleasure to attend that. We did a presentation, and we did a question and answer session. We had a wonderful time. I can't speak for Mr. Raymer, but to me, these are really important things that we can do for the community, these reach out items. I also attended the first, as I mentioned before, meeting on the next labor contract with the Board of Ed. That'll be continuing shortly. Mr. Finger and I will be continuing our informal meeting with the district fire chiefs this coming month. I thought I saw an email out there. There's something scheduled we have there. I will ask Mr. Minarski and Mr. Geiger to communicate to all of the department heads that we would not like to have a meeting in August, and they should plan accordingly. We do need to give a little heads up on that. We have our normal June and July cycle ahead of us. A few things that I think needed to be noted in this month's report. Moving the question, a new direction for us. In the past, it has always been an unwritten policy to not use that motion on the BET. I assume this has now changed. The BET is up front and center and considered the most educated on most subject matter. And I think that our conversations, the public not only watch on TV, but hear what we say and hear what we write and what we do. I caution everyone, it's not my recommendation. However, Robert's Rules is very clear. This change in my mind will not drive the culture the board has or should strive for in the future. Retirement board proposals. I attended a special meeting about the potential changes in a retirement board composition. This is very interesting and will likely take some more time to work out. As you all know, I've tried to be out front on the rising cost and fixed charges, including pension, healthcare, workers' comp, and future labor contracts. I had originally asked for some research on the retirement system so we as a board could become as educated as possible. This hasn't been completed yet, although I hope soon. After the Board of Selectmen, I never say BOS, I say BET or BOE, but I never say Board of Selectmen. After the Board of Selectmen meeting and after last week's HR committee meeting, it was clear we need progress on issues. We as a town need to understand our costs in order to create a strategy for financing in the future. Determining available options, true costs, are a must for a finance board. Today, I began that process with help with Mary Lee Kiernan in meeting with Roland Geiger, Mary Pepe, Al Cava, to start some of the analysis work going forward. The caution I'm instilling is that there is nothing that's going to be able to keep up revenue-wise with the way fixed charges are rising in the town going forward. And we see that, we hear it from our budget committee, and we see it. I'm also, on a lighter note, I'm also not tired of everybody. So I'm scheduling some field trips for the BET, part of our wellness program, to get us off of our, and I put triple X, well, you know what I mean. During my term in Parks and Rec, it was always very helpful to do site visits and meet with the town team members and see their operation. I may do this part of some of our normal meetings. I may move our meeting location, but just be prepared. We're already working on a library tour. We have a BET Police Academy. I'll be reaching out to you with some dates on that. So we are going to take this show on the road. I think it's beneficial for all of us to do that. If we have some shorter agendas, we can move the meetings there. But I think that'll be also very positive for the board to reach out and do that and do some traveling and see some of the sites. I would have a meeting at the golf course, but Joe would probably disappear and be out playing golf, and so I don't want to do that.
And he'd be gone a really long time.
But I can tell you from a liaison point of view, getting out and, like you can hear public safety, Mr. Finger and I are meeting with the firefighting. We've met with the police. The police academy seems awful interesting. I think it's something we want to do. We've been asked by the chief going back, please, let's do this, show the operations, not to talk about the budget. So I'm working on that. So other than that, it's been a very busy month. I congratulate everybody on the budget. In my 11 or 10 budgets on the BET, I'm proud to say, well, I crossed the 100 mark on negative votes in the budget. There was so many people voting this month at the RTM. There was 23 people voting against the budget. But there were no changes, so I'm pretty proud of that. And that's all I have. So it's been an interesting month serving on the finance board. With that, Sean, I'm 20
You're
minutes.
17 minutes under, actually. You wanna
Okay,
keep
so we'll
going,
just
or-
relax for 17 minutes. If anyone else has anything, if not,
Move to adjourn.
Second?
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everyone.